And Tracy, we specifically wanted to bring you in on this because you served on the CIA's Counterterrorism Center of Weapons of Mass Destruction group. You have a lot of experience and background with various terrorist organizations, I know, on the ground in several Middle Eastern nations. From what you know of this story so far, how credible are this man's claims to be involved with Hezbollah, trained by Hezbollah, and also his plans to make a bomb and travel to New York?
That's a great question. And I actually think it's pretty credible, although I am very surprised that he was that forthcoming that quickly. That's the part that surprises me the most. I do think his claims are credible simply because for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we really associate Hezbollah sometimes with just being operating in the Middle East, but they actually do have a very large community in the tri-border region of Latin America. And so it's not surprising when you mention some of the other Latin American countries that he was in, that he may have tried to come up from the south. Also, I believe he was claiming asylum because he felt threatened by Hamas, and this would probably be a classic tactic that Hezbollah may use to try to get someone into the United
That's
States.
very interesting. Is there any reasonable cause that someone would be this forthcoming with information like this?
In my opinion, and look, I have talked with many, many terrorists, quite frankly, throughout my career. I have never seen someone be so forthcoming with this information. So I have to wonder if there's a bit more to the story. I have no doubt that he may have been a member of Hezbollah. That part doesn't surprise me. But the fact that he just sort of laid it all out on the table tells me that maybe he was inexperienced in operations like this, or maybe he was being very grandiose about what he was doing. But either way, it's unacceptable. And it's my understanding that they're going to deport him. And that's also disturbing to me because we don't want to lose track of him.
That's really interesting. What needs to be done in this case, in your opinion? Why is deportation not the answer?
I'm not saying deportation isn't necessarily the answer. The problem is I believe he is claiming nationality of multiple different countries, countries like Costa Rica, Ecuador, Sweden, Lebanon. The question is which country is he deported back to? If he gets deported back to Lebanon, that's going to be an informational black hole for us, if you will. We really don't have a relationship with them. I mean, we have a little bit of one, but not one where we're going to get a lot of information. And that becomes very problematic in terms of tracking him. If he's deported back to one of the other countries, we have very good relationships with them, and it will be much easier to keep tabs on him.
Can you briefly explain the protocol of what border and other law enforcement officials need to do now when apprehending an individual who does make threats like this? How are real threats separated from red herrings? How are claims like this verified?
So with this one, my guess is this probably escalated given the threat that he was making directly to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. The JTTF then went to the Department of Homeland Security with the CIA, with the National Security Council, and they probably did more vetting on him. And in my opinion, most likely they knew that he was a member of Hezbollah. And that's why they were able to so quickly take his threat seriously.
And because he is not a U.S. citizen, can we expect that he would have a trial in the U.S., or would he simply immediately be deported, in your opinion?
He would unfortunately be immediately deported. That's typically how they handle those situations, which is obviously questionable.
I know in the past, Tracy, we've talked about a porous border, concerns about people with relationships or ties with terrorist organizations being able to get into the country through our southern border. Do we have any indication how many individuals like this, those with either strong or loose associations with organizations like Hezbollah, are in the U.S. right now? Is this a canary in the coal mine for us?
It's partially a canary in the coal mine. If you think about it this way, we have about 2 million people on our terrorism watch list right now. And the only way that that's going to be brought to our attention if they come through the border is if they're already on that list, or if they're like Mr. El Badi, they basically confess immediately to what they were going to do. And the latter is very, very rare. And people who are known to be on the terrorism watch list, if they're transiting up through the border, they're not giving that real name that they're on the list for. They know probably that they're already on the list. I feel and have always felt that border security is national security. I know that's a little controversial right now, but we really need to be careful about who we are letting into the border. And we really do need to have more intelligence on the ground there to vet some of these individuals.
How easy is it at this time, do you believe, for someone with ties to terrorist organizations to make it through our southern border undetected?
That's a really good question. I'll just be frank. I think it's probably pretty easy. I think the reality is it's very, very easy to procure fake documents. As we saw in Al-Badi's case, it looks like he procured 3 fake documents from 3 different countries. And so that is a very, very easy thing to do. And I am not saying that Border Patrol is not doing their job. They absolutely are, but they are very understaffed. And this is more of a law enforcement organization, not necessarily an intelligence gathering organization, which is the function of the CIA. And that becomes very difficult in terms of vetting threats and getting in front of threats.
In your opinion, what needs to be done now? Not about the border issue writ large, but specifically about the issue of people with ties to terrorist organizations coming into this country undetected.
I think really what needs to be done is I do think that we need more intelligence gathering at the border directly, because a lot of times what's happening is it's going to DC, it's going to headquarters in DC, and that lag time sometimes makes it so that people are processed far more quickly than they should be, and then become here in the U.S. So I think this sounds like an oversimplified solution, but I would like to see more intelligence gathering boots on the ground at the border.
All right. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.